They do. They believe it hook, line, and sinker. Military is a broad range, yes. So, hold on. I want to show you guys something. How much of the U.S.'s incoming tax dollars are spent on DoD contractors? $4.4 trillion. $4.4 trillion in DoD contractors in 2024. So you're telling me a year we are spending $4.4 trillion. Trillion. T-R-I-L-L. Trillion. Versus how much we spend in SSI or welfare benefits. How much do we spend in DoD contractors out of taxpayers' money versus how much we spend on welfare? You ready for this? Combined, broader welfare investments were only $717 billion, or just under $9 billion with state level funding. So $4.4 trillion to DoD contractors versus $900 billion including state level funds in welfare programs, and that includes SNAP, cash assistance, Medicaid, Social Security. How much did we pay DoD contractors so far in 2025? $2025 payments could surpass $500 billion. Exactly. We have increased our spending by $1.7 billion in the first half of 2025. We are putting contractors in Ukraine. We are putting contractors on the ground in places we cannot have a motherfucking goddamn How much money is spent in lobbying? That is insane. That is insane. Lobbyists have spent a total of about $1.265 billion lobbying bills this year alone. Who is going to benefit from the redistricting in Texas? Who benefits? Republicans. Gaining 5 additional congressional seats, targeting to flip as many as 5 Democratic-held districts by targeting areas in Austin, Dallas, Houston, and South Texas. Republicans hold 25 of Texas's 38 seats under the proposed map that share could raise as high as 30 seats, representing 79% of the delegation. And to be fair, the further generations had priced all of us out of home ownership. My generation, it was not the norm to be able to own your own home. And my kids' generation, shit no. Yes, absolutely. I've talked about the CIA putting drugs in our minority communities to keep them there multiple goddamn times. Good morning, Bracelet. We have had this discussion 100 times if we've had it once. I'm telling y'all. Fact check it. Also, welfare wasn't created for minorities. It was created for poor Southern white women after their drunk ass husbands had left.
People that, well, me apparently.
We do have a choice to do crack, but when it's shoved into your communities and pushed. Oh yeah, absolutely. They absolutely did demand black women remove the men from their homes if they were to get any kind of assistance. Abso-fucking-lutely they did. They purposely destroyed black families. Absolutely did. Yeah, that was true. They brought the soldiers home and they gave them crack as medicine, and that was all the fuck it wrote. And let's not forget, history books are written by the victors, so a bunch of white people wrote that shit. Actually, let's go ahead and do a side-by-side comparison. Do a comparison of the help available during the crack epidemic versus the fentanyl epidemic now. Actually, you're wrong about that, Haley. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. You're wrong about that. So, let's take a side-by-side comparison look. Public perception and the media narrative. Crack epidemic of the 1980s and 1990s was labeled as a crime problem. Crack users were often portrayed as morally bankrupt, dangerous, and beyond help. Now, 2010 to the present, no. Labeled as a public health crisis, fentanyl users are often portrayed as victims needing treatment and compassion. Back in the 80s and 90s, media sensationalized crack baby super predators and urban decay, often tied to black communities. Media focuses now on overdose deaths, family tragedies, and community healing, often tied to white rule in suburban America. Back then, mainstream coverage framed addiction as a personal failing. Now, mainstream coverage frames addiction as a disease. Okay? Let's also look at the way the government responded. The war on drugs escalated, harsher sentencing, mandatory minimums, and the 3-strike law came out of the crack epidemic. Under the fentanyl epidemic, public health centered on approach, funding for treatments, programs, overdose prevention sites, and harm reduction strategies. The 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act created the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine. Support for Patients and Communities Act of 2018 expanded the access to addiction treatment, telehealth, and naloxone distribution. Okay? Billions spent on policing, DEA operations, incarceration. Now billions are spent on opioid settlement payouts from Purdue Pharmaceutical and others. Prevention, treatment programs, and education. Let's look at the way law enforcement handled it. The crack epidemic, police funding surged, militarized tactics, stop and frisk, mass arrests in the black and Latina communities. Today, still criminalized, but the focus has shifted towards drug trafficking networks rather than small-time users. The crack epidemic led to mass incarcerations, especially of young black men with long prison terms for possession. Now there's more diverse programs. Many users are being referred to drug court or rehab instead of prison. Back then, Just Say No campaigns and DARE programs dominated prevention efforts. Now, harm reduction is promoted, Narcan distribution, safe injection sites, and fentanyl testing strips. So let's look at healthcare and social services. During the crack epidemic, treatment options were underfunded, often inaccessible, and heavily stigmatized. There's been a widespread push for Medicaid expansion, Medicaid-assisted treatment, and crisis response teams. Crack epidemic, there was no wide distribution of overdose reversal drugs. Narcan wasn't available yet to the public. Now it is available over the counter through community programs. Federal funding went mostly to law enforcement during the crack epidemic, not to social support systems. Federal and state funds increasingly directed towards rehab, mental health care, and family services. So are you seeing the differences in the way that the crack epidemic was treated and the way that the fentanyl epidemic is being treated now? The crack epidemic predominantly impacted black urban community. Policies were punitive and racially based. The fentanyl epidemic predominantly impacts white, rural, and suburban communities. Policy is more compassionate and healthcare centered. Racial disparities in arrest, sentencing, and parole eligibility widely sharpened. Still, racial disparities in access to treatment, but stigma is lower for white users compared to black and Latino users. Bottom line is this. The crack era was treated as a crime problem with mass incarcerations, militarized policing, and stigma. While the fentanyl era is treated as a health problem with treatment programs, harm reduction, compassion. The policy just isn't different. It's about who was affected, what race was affected, and class dynamics that shaped political will. Yes. Do you see now what she's talking about? A lot of people don't look at that, but just breaking it down piece by piece to see how everything from policy to healthcare was treated differently based on who it affected. Yeah. That is actually true as well. Look into how black women were treated by doctors. Doctors taught that they could not feel pain like white people. Absolutely. That is the absolute God's honest truth. Doctors are to black women what cops are to black men. And I will put that on everything I stand on.
I know who sent them to Brittany.
Absolutely did. Oh, do you want? I can pull that up if you want. Maternal death rates in America, whites versus black women. So higher mortality rate for black women as far back as soon as 2023, where the mortality rate for black women was 50.3 deaths per 100,000 lives birthed, which is more than 3 times higher than the rate for white women. The disparity has remained significant despite fluctuations in overall maternal mortality rates, including a decline observed between 2021 and 2022 following the peak of COVID pandemic. Specific causes contribute disproportionately to the higher mortality rate among black women, including preeclampsia, eclampsia, postpartum cardiomyopathy. Black women's maternal mortality rates from eclampsia and preeclampsia are 5 times higher than those for white women. Similarly, the risk of maternal death from postpartum cardiomyopathy is 5 times higher for black women compared to white women, and the risk of late maternal death from this condition is 6 times higher. underlying factors is systemic racism and implicit bias within the healthcare system. This can lead in a delay in diagnosis and treatment and a lower quality of care for Black women. And we get that, Trish, but you also can't be mad if somebody else is still upset. If the shoe doesn't fit you, don't wear it. If that makes sense. And she's right. We're gonna see color regardless. Unless we blind, we gonna see color. But just not, a lot of people don't realize what somebody's gone through as a person of color in America unless you've lived it. I grew up with nothing but people of color around me. In a very, very white town. And I mean a very, very white town.
Kids never forget.
I'd rather have one of them. At least I don't have to hate dealing with cat hair.
Hi, Christy. Hi, Uzizo.
Yeah.
Cats.
Now I have a double something. What do I have? I have a double something. I don't even know.
Double vision.
Double vision.
Oh. Actually, I don't. They said there was a chance after the surgery I might have double vision because when you correct, guess what? It didn't happen. I got lucky. Imagine that. Guess what? It didn't happen. I got lucky. Imagine that.
Morning, Chow. How's Nana doing this morning? There you go, Casey. There you go. That's how you do it, boo. I mean, that sounds about right, Shell. Good, because we are not in an anti-cookie mood.
I got lucky. It didn't happen.
Is she still repeating the same shit?
Yeah, she won't do that.
Yeah, that way
Yeah. Alright, guys, we're gonna get off for a little bit. We'll be back in a little while. Have a good day.
lost. I smell. Look, folks.
Quit. Right. Ooh. That shit's funny. Absolutely, Trish. Morning, chicken. Haley, stop trying to pick a fight in my comments, please. That's not what we're doing here right now. You know what? I'm just going to end this live. We're not going to do this.